philosophy, correlates to the real, whereas the real remains indifferent. Exhaustively elaborated in Philosophia and Non-Philosophy, published in 1989. The universalizing gesture of the subject's auto-constitution is an unstoppable tendency, a conatus in a way, to establish control over, that is, knowledge of reality. The result of this striving is always heterogeneous, born of the world, in Lorwellian sense of the discourse, in Foucauldian sense, and of the solitary position of the gesture of the universalizing and always already singular subject. The non-hegemonic universalistic subject is aware of this double nature of the process of truth generation. The non-hegemonic universalistic subject succumbs to the dictate of the real rather than the transcendental, to the event rather than to a doctrine, philosophy. The non-hegemonic subject pursues a form of universalism and enables political unity that transcends the boundaries of different worldviews. And I believe that the example of this was, for example, the 18 days of revolution in Egypt, regardless of what happens afterward. This event worked in the way that's described. The universalistic proclivity of the subject originates not only from the radical solitude it dwells in, but also from the conatus to control the reality in order not to be swallowed by the real, which is a category of intensity. The latter, by its Spinozian definition, is a category of infinity. The intensity, that infinite striving, is situated in the body, which is by definition a category of extension and finitude. And this is something that creates a paradox, producing a signifying surplus. This noise, this semiotic surplus, is the reference of the crack, of the gaping lack in signification in both the universalistic and particularistic enunciation. This noise, this surplus or redundancy, is the symptom of the real, that is the impossibility to accomplish fullness of significance of each statement, both universalistic and particularistic. The vision of the subject's universality we have just presented enables us to imagine a universalistic speech in accordance with the political insistence to reject the language of hierarchy and subjugation. According to this vision, each particular subject is constitutively endowed with the pretension toward universality, and each particular subject is possible in its very particularity by virtue of such pretension. Therefore, the right to be a subject, always already identical to itself rather than a mere agent of otherness, represents the right to a universalistic enunciation. The new claims of universality beyond hegemony should be those which aim to win anew the right to a universalistic discourse, to a subjectivity that affirms the universalistic gesture which has introduced it. The non-Eurocentric and non-self-Balkanizing politics coming from the margins of Europe, the Balkans, should also be projects of claiming one's right to a universalistic enunciation, or rather one's right to a discourse of universalistic claims for and by the subjugated or the excluded. Respecting diversity and difference would mean respecting the right of the others to produce universalistic enunciations. Whereas the discursive and explanatory paradigm the universalistic stance creates should be subject to anybody's pretension to inhabit it while affirming its heterogeneous nature of historicity and formal universalism. A multitude of universalistic enunciations will establish continuous interplay of acts and agents of the pretension to universality. Respecting each attempt, each striving to address the world, coming from any corner of the world, is the kind of respect for diversity and difference I'm advocating here. It is such kind of politics from and of the Balkans I would argue for. And I still claim that the Middle East, or some cases of the Middle East, it's not monolithic, did offer example of this. They did offer, political paradigm for this century, or the beginning of this century, and a paradigm of a possibility of revolution which works in universalistic terms, which is attempted to be mined from different corners of the world. So this is kind of a proof that it is that universalism beyond its cultural reification is possible. I don't know if I still have the time. So the post-structuralist orthodoxy, vis-a-vis the heretic fidelity to the theoretical legacy of postmodern feminism. So I'm going to speak of feminism over here. Again, as I said in the beginning, talking about this otherness, about these instances or politics of othering, I'm sure when referring to the Balkans, I'm sure it also resonates with the issues of gender and feminism. And I suppose this discourse of mine would be impossible had it not been informed by feminist philosophy in the first place. So this transition toward feminism is kind of natural, and I wanted to add this dimension of feminism or issues of gender to the issues of Balkans and the critique of Euro-Centrism. And I also want to more strongly introduce Laruelle a little bit here, who is still considered as a pretty, esoteric thinker. I believe he is politically applicable. I have been applying him in indirect ways until now, and now I'm going to do it even more evidently or emphatically in terms of non-philosophy. I will continue the same argument. So, the post-structuralist orthodoxy vis-a-vis the heretic fidelity to the theoretical legacy of postmodern feminism. So I'm kind of trying to retain a certain stance myself of fidelity to the postmodern legacy, or let's say mostly Foucauldian legacy of feminism. But my stance is one, or at least tries to be one, of heresy rather than orthodoxy. And I'm claiming that there is such thing as postmodern, post-structuralist orthodoxy in feminist nowadays. In his book, Le Christ Futur, in Leçon de Récit, it's already translated in English, The Future Christ Lesson in Heresy, François Laruelle has developed his concept of the heretic subject as one which is always already grounded in revolt or in rebellion. And the constant struggle against, so it's grounded in revolt and the constant struggle against the self-contained and self-content philosophy. According to the non-philosophical terminology of Laruelle, philosophy is synonymous with the world. So, the world as this, ruling discourses around us, etc. So it's we can kind of establish analogy, terminological analogy here, for simply in order to help explain the notion of the world and how come it equals with philosophy. So it's in Laruelle. So it's kind of, the dominant discourse, and the dominant discourse around us is basically philosophically formed or informed, grounded. In the last instance, whatever is established as kind of a normality around us is actually not a product, a rendition of philosophy, of philosophical traditions, of philosophy as such. Civilization, Western civilization, is in a way, materialization of philosophy, Western philosophy. I believe that in his sense, all philosophy is Western. It's Greco-Judean cultural product, I suppose. So, according to the non-philosophical terminology of Laruelle, philosophy is synonymous with the world. Both notions refer to a discursivity which is ideologically and epistemologically foreclosed, circumscribed in a way that represents an entrapment into its own vicious circle of questions and responses that are ceaselessly mutually generated. There is no room for the noise produced by the redundant real, which we all are in the last instance. In the last instance, we all are this real which does not make sense, and we all keep attempting to be part of the world which makes sense, or philosophy, as Laruelle puts it. So, there is no room for the noise produced by the redundant real, which we all are in the last instance. Within this circumscription, the philosophy the world represents. According to Laruelle, the pre-subjective instance, the one outside the world, while amidst it, so it's at the center of it, it's inside the world and it's still outside of it. The pre-subjective instance or the real. So, according to Laruelle, the pre-subjective instance, the one outside the world, while still amidst it, is always already heretic. The surplus of meaning, the experience or the lived that eludes any signification, is precisely the real of the human without protection, without consistency in the weakness and in strength. So this is one of the definition of the human or the non-human animal we all are and inhabit state of the real. So it's the signification is precisely the real of the human without protection, without consistency in the weakness and in strength. The latter represents the instance of the immanent rebellion against and for the world, he says. And it's immanent and it's ceaseless. And this is what we all are in the last instance, he claims. And then we're philosophically alienated from this rebellion which is immanent to all of us as instances of the real. So this is immanent to all of us in the last instance. The surplus which always already evades the meaning, the surplus for which it is impossible to absorb any sense, the surplus which is radically ignorant and rejects any philosophical definition, which would form and place it in the world, it is this surplus, or rather remainder of the real in the transcendental, the philosophy, which is the source of the radical rebellion. It is the potentiality for resistance which will not stem from the foreclosure